Westworld Season 2, Episode 5, Welcome to Shogun World as I call it, was amazing. I honestly enjoyed every single moment of the episode, although there were some issues that I had with some of the writing regarding Dolores, as usual, but in this video we're going to discuss some of my favorite moments from the episode, as well as some things that you may or may not have easily missed. Sa, hajime yo! I just want to say cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar, dollar bills, yo. That was totally a version of Wu-Tang's Clangs. Wu-Tang Clang, ain't none with. That was a version of their song Cream, and it was actually playing in the background. There was another version of Paint Black when they arrived in the Japanese version of Sweetwater that was playing in the background as well. Those are some things that you may or may not have missed, and I had to get those out of the way. Sorry for blowing your eardrums out, but I'm a big Wu-Tang fan. A heavy theme this episode was duality. We got to sort of see like how Shogun World works and how they have basically the exact same town as Sweetwater. And then when we were visiting with Dolores and Teddy, we actually got to see Sweetwater. Honestly, as of right now, we saw such a little amount of Bernard. I feel like what happened with Teddy and Dolores takes place before the timeline that we saw with Bernard tonight. It totally makes sense because we saw Teddy, dead when they were basically pulling all of these bodies out of the river. One thing I will say is that Dolores, despite me not fully understanding why it is the way she's acting this way, I think this is the show's version of sort of like a roundabout way of just making her out to be the villain. Her basically killing Teddy and re-uploading him with the Flood Initiative, that's pretty much, I need to go back and I'll throw a screen cap up right now of it, but it honestly, makes me think that she basically sacrificed him. And when I reviewed episode 2, I sort of saw her, the way that she discussed with him, not everyone is gonna live, I knew that was gonna come back, and I pat myself on the back because that's exactly what it did. She told Teddy that he's basically too good of a person, too good of a host to join their army. There's no place for people like him in this new world that she's creating. So she completely wiped everything about it. And if you listen to the tech, he tells her, are you sure you want to do this? Doing this much of a change in character is drastic, and it's not good to do it without doing a complete reset on the character. Like basically rebuilding Teddy from the ground up. It's dangerous to upload and change his characteristics and his backstory this drastically without doing that reset. So I think we're gonna see a bit of Teddy doing exactly what Dolores wants her to, and then also sort of breaking away from that. I think ultimately we know where his journey is gonna end, and it's in that lake, and I kind of can't wait to see it because I feel like having more explanation for Dolores, or Wyatt should I say, I've come to realize that we're supposed to hate the scenes that she's in because, she's the new villain of the show, and killing Teddy just sort of confirms that. But I hope, I say I can't wait till we get more answers because then it'll make me understand her more. So I won't have as much questions and as many choices in the writing that I do. Or, sorry, as many questions that I have with the choices that the writers take. Another thing, or another one of my favorite moments of the episode was 100% the entirety. Once I figured out what was going on in Shogun World Sweetwater, I immediately was like, okay, I'm gonna dig this. Like, we basically got to see the counterpart for Maeve and her gang. Akane is basically the Shogun World version of Maeve. Now, we do hear that a lot of these storylines are borrowed. Now, if you remember, Sizemore mentions to Maeve, once she figures out what's going on, that you try writing 300 stories in 3 weeks. It's impossible. So, of course, he's related, or carried over a lot of these storylines from Westworld into these other ones. One thing I'm curious about, because we got to see Armistice counterpart, I want to know if there's another Armistice counterpart in Rosworld. She's like a sleeper character. Like, she's one of my favorites. I feel like she needs more scenes and more explanation, more badassness, basically, more screen time. But she's definitely one of my background favorite characters. Like, I love her. I'm curious to see if there is a version of her in Rosworld. If there is, oh man, it's going down. It's awesome. It's good to see that not only are they, paying a lot of attention to detail, like, we got the slowed down Japanese version of Paint Black, which is a song from the Rolling Stones, which is one of my favorite bands. It's not only one of my favorite bands, it's one of my dad's favorite bands. So growing up, I listened to them a lot. So it was cool to see that, as soon as I heard that music playing, I was like, okay, this seems a little bit too familiar. Just everything about that scene was amazing. I also enjoyed, and this is one thing that you may or may not have missed, I kind of enjoyed the little bit of like hint that they gave us in the future. Remember, at the very beginning of it, they hear that the Shogun may be alive and may be sentient, because a lot of the things that he's doing is not written in his character. It's not part of his loop. So the fact that he's doing all of these things, like sending his army into the village and sending ninjas there, they weren't supposed to be part of the storyline according to Sizemore, it just made you think that he was sentient. So when they get there and they notice that he's leaking the cortical fluid, or the brain fluid, basically it was a callback to the same thing that's happening with Bernard. The main difference here though is that Bernard is actually modeled after a human. And I had a theory in my last episode 4 breakdown in which I theorized that Bernard is a human hybrid. This is confirming that, because we know that even though he's leaking cortical fluid, which would make a normal host act insane and crazy outside of their loop, we know that Bernard is aware of what he's doing, and he's acting kind of way more human than the Shogun was. I honestly think that we're going to find out 100% this next episode. Going into episode 6, we're going to find out for sure what exactly is going on, and hopefully they're going to snuff out some of these timelines and make it more apparent of what's going on, because a couple people left a comment on my video, and I've seen comments on Twitter and on Reddit with people saying it seems like they're just jumping around in the show just because they can. I do enjoy the fact that Maeve's timeline, for the most part, seems to be on one consistent path, and the same with Dolores. Most of the scenes that we're seeing here in are from the same timeline. Now there are a few, like in episode 1, we did see her speaking with Arnold, but for the most part, she's on a consistent timeline. The Man in Black from the last episode, his timeline was all over the place, but I enjoyed that. That was the perfect way to do it. They showed us so much of his backstory. But sort of just getting back on track of what I was saying earlier, I honestly think that it is setting up for Dolores and Maeve to have an encounter again, like they did in episode 2, but to have another encounter at the end of this season, and it's gonna be like a brawl. Like, we'll have Maeve leading an army of Shogun warriors with ninjas, and then Dolores leading an army of blackface hosts that she's controlled. It's crazy, you know, speaking more on the duality of stuff. I love Maeve, I love Dolores, I'm confused with Dolores' plotline, but you can't really get too upset at one or the other, because what they're doing is arguably the same thing. Dolores is controlling hosts, but forcibly. Maeve is doing the same thing, but just more like of a stylized way. So, because the writing is leading us to, you know, enjoy Maeve and root for her more than we are for Dolores right now, you could honestly argue that they're doing the same thing. So it's almost like Game of Thrones does this same thing, where they humanize the villains, but they, you know, also humanize the main characters just as much. So you feel bad for them, but you also hate them. So this show is doing that as well with Dolores and Maeve, and I feel like a lot of people were thinking that it was building up to Maeve fighting with the Man in Black. I don't think so. I think the way that it's going is it's setting up a fight or a showdown, a major battle coming up at the end of the season between Maeve and Dolores, and when we have the reunion 2.0. I can't help myself, I'm a Game of Thrones channel, so another shout out or reference to Game of Thrones here. There was a scene where Dolores and Teddy are, you know, going at it, they have sex. If you think about it, that's probably going to be the only time that happens, because we do know that Teddy gets lobotomized at the end of the episode. But I feel like the shot that they had with his butt, that was a callback to Game of Thrones last season with the boat sex. This was Teddy and Dolores' boat sex, so like Jon and Daenerys from Game of Thrones, and the butt shot out scene, the ladies, y'all know what I'm talking about. It's the same, and it's a callback to Jon Snow. But anyway, moving things along here, I cannot forget this, and this is not something that you missed because it was pretty obvious. Maeve is developing superpowers. She has somehow just developed telekinesis, and she was able to forcibly blow out a blast and put things the way that she wants to. So I feel like this is awesome. The way that the episode ended with her holding the sword, basically getting ready to fight the Shogun's entire army. I honestly think that was like misleading. Obviously, she's not going to sit there and fight all of them with a samurai sword and her telepathy. But I don't really know how I felt about it in the moment watching the episode. I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. Something had to save them because, you know, they're about to get beheaded. And then she'd use the power a few scenes before that, but it just, I don't really know if I enjoyed it that much because the repercussions of that, if this means that Maeve was able to develop this power because she self-boosted all of her stats, then that means that any host that becomes sentient, that gets their hands on that device, can do the same thing. I feel like there needs to be more explanation for what it is that she's doing. Like, she's clearly got the same ability over the host that Robert Ford had, and the one thing that made that so awesome and so special was that Robert Ford, the originator, one of the creators of the park, was able to do that. It doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, for Maeve to have such a power. But you guys let me know down below in the comment section. Do you think it's a little bit OP and sort of like a Deus Ex Machina sort of thing, like they needed to give Maeve a special power, otherwise she wasn't going to get out of that situation? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, let me know if you think it's a little bit ridiculous that Maeve did have all of her stats boosted, but she wasn't able to overpower the Shogun host. Like, that didn't make sense. He had her pulled back and he was about to choke her out, but she wasn't able to overpower him. Now, I do know that certain hosts have certain stats boosted up, but I'm pretty sure if Maeve was smart, she would have boosted her strength as well. And she's done this with, she's flipped around humans and used judo on them before, so it was a little bit lacking in the sense that, I don't know, I guess they wanted it to just be more dramatic, as she show her as more of a damsel in distress, and then she breaks out with this power. But you guys let me know what you think about that down below in the comment section. Another thing that might be, you know, somewhat easily missed is the fact that Maeve tried to put Akane down the awakening path. Like, there was a scene towards the very end when she discovered what had happened to Sakura, where Maeve was basically tapping into the consciousness of Akane, and using her voice powers to sort of just awaken her. And honestly, Akane refused it. She made that choice. She made the choice that Maeve didn't necessarily make in awakening her. I honestly feel like there's something special about Maeve, because there's no way, you know, and I know I had just said that it seems a little bit unbelievable that she was able to develop this telekinesis, but now the more that I think about it, the more I think she may be a special host that was put, you know, in the place that she was put in to become the de facto leader of the host in the park, or leading them onto a path of somewhat civility, like a peace or an understanding between humans. We do know that one of the things that Maeve has been heavily shown is that she works the best with humans. She works well with hosts, but she's one of the only hosts that are somewhat sentient that's not walking around killing every human she sees. So I think Maeve was set up to be this leader that has to make a choice, whether she wants to lead the host to glory or whether she wants to lead the host to a peace. Because I think what everyone beside Dolores realizes is that what she's doing is not the right way. Like, just going around and killing humans for no reason, or just because she's pissed off that a few bad humans did terrible shit to her back in the day. Everyone in the park, for the most part, unless they're under the control of Dolores, seems to understand that. Maeve understands that, and the decision that she made to stay in the park instead of leave, the decision to go back and get her daughter, is going to translate into bigger things down the road, as the choice to stay with the host and become their leader, and instead of leave and escape with her own life while she can. I think there's going to be a big war between enslaved hosts and freed hosts. Maeve is going to be leading those free hosts. I think we might get, not necessarily a montage, but just some sort of like scenes with her later on in the season where she's going around and awakening hosts. One of the most sad moments from the episode, and this might be another moment that was easily missed, was when Clementine saw her replacement and she started mouthing the words to the scene that she normally has with Maeve when they're in Sweetwater in the bar right before Hector and his gang of cronies comes in and robs them. It made her sad. It made her realize that, you know, there's something missing there. That was probably one of the most saddest moments, not only for the episode, but of the entirety of the series. I don't know, I feel really bad for Clementine. It probably helps that she's a gorgeous woman, and obviously that's going to be a soft spot, but I feel like there's a little bit there to the fact that she almost had a breakthrough. Like, she was lobotomized by actual Westworld employees last season, but Dolores is continuing that lobotomization. What may end up happening is that when Maeve and Dolores have their showdown, now quote me on this because you heard it here first, But when Dolores and Maeve had this showdown, what may end up happening is that Maeve rescues Clementine. She saves her and maybe does some sort of reboot to her to get her back to her old self. I honestly feel like half of the people that are following Dolores, or half of the hosts that are following Dolores right now, if they had a choice, they wouldn't do so. They would either join Maeve's side or they would go out and do their own thing. I feel like everything about what Dolores is doing, and this is the reason why I keep calling back and say that it's bad choices in the writer's room, is that it's becoming more clear, but it'll be more clear in the future. It just makes us want to hate Dolores, and that's hard to do because we all love Dolores so much in season 1, but the show is just gradually turning her into a villain. And it's not even a gradual change. These are like drastic changes overnight. Like we see her humanizing a little bit with Peter Abernathy when she sees him. And that's another thing too, is it makes it hard, or it seems a little bit inconsistent when she's bouncing back and forth between the role of Dolores and the role of Wyatt. Remember when she's describing that plague that was going around, which I think was basically an old version of mad cow disease, that it was spread from the flies, like, and she was telling Teddy that, you know, her father basically burned the meat instead of letting them live, and she was saying that Teddy would be the person that would let the cows live and just sort of suffer because he couldn't take it upon himself to end their life. I honestly, one question is I don't understand how cows burning stinks, because to me it probably would have smelled like burgers, but also it's so hard to watch because, you know, we liked her, we loved her so much, and Evan Rachel Wood is such a good actress, she's pulling this off. It's like, it just seems like she's bouncing back and forth, and I think what the show is trying to do, or what the writers are trying to do, and what Evan Rachel Wood is trying to portray on screen, is that she's fighting two dualities. That you have this Dolores, and then you have this Wyatt narrative, and she's merging the two of them. So there may be some hope, and like if she were to get a sit down, and that's leading me into the trailer for the next episode. I'm going to talk about that here in a second, but I think we may see a turnaround, or at some point in this series, not in this season, but somewhere, you know, seasons down the line, we may see Dolores turn around and come back. Maybe she has to have like a full realization of what it is that she's doing. Maybe she needs to have another conversation with Bernard and Arnold. And with that being said, let's quickly talk about the trailer, and then I'll wrap this video up. Okay, so in the first parts to the promo trailer for episode 6, it looks kind of like, I don't know, it's like they're setting us up for failure, because what it initially looks like is another conversation between Dolores and Arnold, but Dolores says something like, that's not what he said. So that makes me think that maybe, for some reason, Bernard is like trying to get Daenerys to go back onto a different loop. I don't know. This could just be another conversation we have yet to see between Bernard and Dolores. But what could also be happening here, and you know what later happens in the trailer, is that somehow Dolores has found a way to alter the memories, or the cornerstones, the reveries, if you will, of certain hosts. And maybe she's doing this by experimenting on herself. She's changing memories or cornerstones that made her who she was. So maybe she, for some reason, can't get access to the tablet to boost certain emotions down or up like how she wants to. So maybe she's doing this internally by going into her, you know, memory, or into her brain frame, if you will, and going back and alternating certain things or remembering things differently. I honestly think it would be insane if somehow she's able to control what she does, and maybe she does something different in these reveries. I think they're setting us up for something crazy. Because if you'll remember, it was mentioned way earlier in the season about something called a mesh network, and this could be how Maeve tapped into this and got this telepathy. She was able to convince the ninja that was about to kill her. Like, she was able to connect through the mesh. Now, I don't really know too much about it, and I really want to do a theory video on it. So you guys let me know down below if you want me to cover in full the episode 6 promo, and also if you want me to discuss my theory of how Maeve has this telepathy. Now, real quick, I am very active on Twitter, so if you want to follow me to find out about my latest video drops, or, you know, secret polls, or just anything in general, go on over to Twitter and follow me at Sir_Hunts. But while I was watching the episode, I was indulging myself in the tweets that people were using when they were using hashtag Westworld. A lot of the people, about halfway through the episode, most of the tweets that I kept heavily seeing were from people whose accounts I don't think should really be reviewing the show in any sort of aspect of the word, because they're kind of just like, they seem like they're bandwagon fans, and they seem like they don't really understand Westworld. But for the most part, a lot of people were saying not just on Twitter too, but also in on Reddit and just other platforms where, like Facebook, a lot of people were saying this episode was slow, and they hate how the show takes time and wastes it on Dolores because everyone hates her, so we should be spending screen time of the episode on the characters and the scenes or whatever that are just the most enjoyable, which in tonight's episode it was Shogun World. A lot of people were just hating on it because of that. I see where some of the hate comes from because it was a slower paced episode, but the show is planning on multiple seasons, so they're setting up for stuff just like how Game of Thrones was early on. They want to have huge, massive payoffs in the end. Now, I do agree with the sentiment that they're doing the jumping around timeline a little bit to the point where it's just like we're doing it because we can, but for the most part, this was a character-centric episode. So this is going to have some payoffs. Like, yes, it was slower, but can you really sit here and complain about Maeve and the awesomeness that is Shogun World? I can't. You guys let me know down below in the comment section if you think this was a slower episode, or if you think certain people should keep their crappy opinions to themselves when they don't understand the show all the way. Let me know all that down below in the comment section. I had to take this thing off my head. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. If you could please slap a like on this, make sure you're subscribed, and then turn your notifications on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones and Westworld video throughout this entirety of this season, and then continuing on after the season. Make sure you're subscribed so that you get notifications for all those things. The like goal for this video is 421. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Also, super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. Thank you all so much for your love and support. And these kinds of videos would not be possible without you all's support. If anyone watching would like to show your love and support to Sir Hunts, you can check out my Patreon link down below in the description and up here. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews. Do you think I was going to go this whole video without mentioning Fire and Blood, baby? Fire and Blood. Anyone going to the Con of Thrones in Dallas, which at this point in time, it's about 3 days away. If anyone is going, make sure you leave a comment and let me know you're going down below in this video. And, I don't know. Thanks for watching. Arigato.